Role of culture in teaching and learning languages. Language learners are also culture learners. Culture plays an important role in language education because it motivates students and facilitates communication. The teaching of culture has been intertwined with the teaching of language, at times more closely than others, but never more closely than now. If language education will be to successfully incorporate the presentation of cultural information in language classroom, it would greatly increase the benefits of language study. Based on the research, there are four meanings of culture. Their semantic sense encompasses the whole conceptualization system, which conditions perceptions and thought processes. Their aesthetic sense includes cinema, literature, music, and media, while their sociological one refers to the organization and nature of family, interpersonal relations, customs, material conditions, and so on. Their pragmatic or social linguistic sense refers to the background knowledge, social and paralinguistic skills, and language code which are necessary for successful communication. While not necessarily all inclusive or mutually exclusive, these aspects of culture offer more course to the common definition above and reflect culture's many dimensions. As language educators, we teach and our students learn about the culture of the language whether or not we include it overtly in the curriculum. This point was made by MacLeod some years ago based on my research. By teaching a language, one is inevitably already teaching culture implicitly. Social linguistics reveals why. There are values, presuppositions about the nature of life and what is good and bad in it to be found in any normal use of language. Such normal language use is accurately what most language instructors seek to teach. There are several reasons why language and culture are from they start inseparably connected. Number one, language acquisition does not follow a universal sequence but differs across cultures. Number two, the process of becoming a competent member of society is realized through exchanges of language, in particular social situations. Number three, every society orchestrates the ways in which children participate in particular situations, and this in turn affects the form, the function, and the content of children's utterances. Number four, caregivers' primary concern is not with the grammatical input, but with the transmission of socio-cultural knowledge. And lastly, the native learner, in addition to language, acquires also the paralinguistic patterns and the kinesthetic of his or her culture. Another thing to answer, how language teaching is culture teaching. Number one, language codes cannot be taught in isolation because processes of socio-cultural transmission are bound to be at work on on many levels. Examples, the contents of language exercises, the cultural discourse of textbooks, and the teacher's attitudes towards their target culture. And number two, in their role of secondary caregivers, language teachers need to go beyond monitoring linguistic production in the classroom and become aware of the complex and numerous processes of intercultural mediation that any foreign language learner undergoes. Culture and communication are inseparable because culture not only dictates who talks to whom, about what, and how the communication proceeds. It also helps to determine how people encode messages, the meanings they have for messages, and the conditions and circumstances under which various messages may or may not be sent, noticed, or interpreted. Culture is the foundation of communication. We should and do teach our students the language culture in our classes when our goal is communicative competence. Not only is culture part and parcel of the process, but also the educational cost of it within language education is great. The question arises, however, that if language and culture are so intricately intertwined, why bother overtly focusing on culture when there are so many other aspects of the curriculum that need more attention? Culture as language and language as culture. Pedagogy, the short answer here includes several points. First of all, we should include culture in our curriculum in an intentional mode in order to keep away from the stereotyping and pitfalls. Second, though culture is indirect, is what we teach to assume that those who are learning the language in our classes are also learning the cultural knowledge and skills necessary to be able. Language speakers denies the difficulty of culture, language learning, and communication. The third reason for particularly including culture in our language curriculum is to facilitate teachers to do a better job teaching culture and to be more responsible to students for the culture learning that takes place in our language classes. Language is culture. When a person chooses to learn French, for example, he or she is not merely interested in the linguistics of the language, but everything to do with French and France. What he or she is taking in includes all the preconceptions about the French language, that it is romantic, it is beautiful, that it is spoken along the scene, and so on. Languages come with some cultural associations attached. By speaking the language, therefore, one automatically makes parallel oneself with the culture of the language. To speak a language well, one has to be able to think in that language, and thought is a very powerful. A person's mind is in a sense the center of his identity. So, if a person thinks in French in order to speak French, one might say that he has in a way almost taken on a French identity. That is the essence and the power of a language. Language is culture. Language is the spirit of the country and people who speak it. I believe that the role of the culture in all aspects of education and language are at the core of promoting global economy, global harmony, and peace. The language and culture that each individual brings to the classroom must be taken into account. Therefore, I believe that language education is not an end in itself, but the bridge to a unified multicultural society when it taps the students' cultural and language heritage. Students move toward into the classroom with both community and individual languages and cultures. It is important to tap the cultural or language heritage and knowledge of each learner to supply the foundation for a helpful curriculum.